Hi, my name is Rebecca and I am a birthaholic. All right. Let's just take it back a second. So yes, as the title suggests, I am addicted to giving birth. I really am. I feel like I am a birthaholic. Now, I've only done it twice, obviously, but it only took once to make me realize how much I loved it. And that might be a really hard thing to even comprehend for some people, but I'm going to explain to you why I'm addicted to giving birth and how you can be too, and why I'm so passionate about empowering women to take control and to have the birth that they desire. So this video is something that I have been wanting to talk about for a while. Something's always come up and I'm pretty excited to finally sit down and talk about it. I've got some notes here that I will be referring to because I'm the type of person that will just blurt out information, so I need to have structured notes so I stick to what I'm actually wanting to say. So I am incredibly passionate about empowering women to give birth the way that they desire. As everyone knows, I had 2 home births. And do I believe that every baby should be born at home? Yeah, I do. I think that it would be amazing if all babies were born at home. But I know that's not the case. I know that there's medical issues that stand in the way. If you have a high-risk pregnancy, absolutely you do not want to be giving birth at home. And I would never ever judge anybody for not choosing a home birth. That's not what this video is about. It's about empowering you as a woman. But having said that, I really had such an incredible experience in my home births, and I want to empower some other women who might be kind of on the fence as to what they should do, and give you some resources that you can go and look at as well to maybe help you cement that decision that you might be faced against. So believe it or not, birth has been happening since the beginning of time. I know, right? I got you there. But it really is, it's one of the most natural things that a woman can do, next to menstruation. If we were unable to give birth, which means we were unable to reproduce, the human race would cease to exist. Yet for some reason, childbirth is now feared, and the medical system has really turned childbirth into a medical condition. I just need to say something right here, right now, guys. Childbirth is not a medical condition. I'll say that again. Childbirth is not a medical condition. It was actually only in the 20th century that there was a real shift from home births to hospital births. Now, the shift really came about because there were many babies that were dying, and so women were hoping to have safer births in a hospital with a doctor. Unfortunately, even with a doctor, even in a hospital, this just wasn't the case. For at least a third to a half of the first part of the century, there was lots of infections, there was a lack of sterilization, and there were a lot of complications, and so babies and mothers were still dying inside hospitals during childbirth. So this idea that childbirth was a medical condition really was born, no pun intended, out of the fact that many babies were dying at birth, and so they started calling it a medical condition rather than something that's purely natural and supposed to happen. And so this was really due to the lack of sanitation, and once they learned that simply washing their hands in between seeing patients could really make a difference, things definitely changed, but the mentality around birth really kind of just stayed the same. Pregnancy and birth is natural. Every single animal goes through it, and we are animals. It's just, it's so natural. It's the way that God designed it so that we could reproduce. And so, you know, we have the right to take ownership of our own personal autonomy and really stop allowing doctors and hospital staff to treat us like pregnancy and birth is a medical condition, because it's just not. And so long as they treat it like a medical condition, it's going to turn into one. So obviously I know that there's probably many people out there that might be watching this and at the moment you're getting super defensive, maybe a little bit offended because of what I'm saying, and you might be thinking, well, the medical system saved mine and my baby's life and things like that. Now, I just want to say that there is absolutely a place for medical intervention. It saves lives. It really does. It can save lives. And for that, I'm very grateful to be living in this day and age, because it would have been scary to give birth back in the day when they didn't know about cleanliness and good sanitation, and you weren't sure if you were going to live or if your baby was going to live. But we know those things now. The statistics say that 75 to 80% of births should really go as smoothly as nature intended. Unfortunately though, you know, there's only like a fraction of women who don't have a medical requirement for intervention who make it to the finish line without being subjected to the meddling from the doctors. And, you know, I really wanted to have control over my births. And that might be really hard for someone to understand, because you think, who better to have control over your birth than a doctor who's trained in the medical field in case something goes wrong. But I wasn't about to put fear as my first and foremost decision to where I wanted to birth my baby. I did not want to have a spirit of fear over my birth. And so I wanted a spirit of empowerment and a spirit of well-being and a spirit of positivity. And I knew for me personally that birthing at home was the best way that I could do that. And so right after I fell pregnant with Caprice, I started looking into my options. And I just started to do some more research, because I was always drawn to like not being in a hospital. I didn't want to be in that sterile environment. And I was really drawn to just having a completely natural birth. And when I say completely natural, I don't just mean free from medication. I just mean natural in all aspects. I didn't want to be confined to a bed. I didn't even want to be like in a hospital room. I wanted to be in my own house. I wanted to go to bed at the end of the night after giving birth to my babies in my own bed with my husband and my baby next to us. And so the more I researched, I realized that I needed to be doing a home birth. That's what suited me. And so I decided to give birth at home. Now, I know I can't control everything, I know that, but I was more than ready and prepared to do everything in my power to make sure that I got the birth that I wanted. And I was speaking life over my birth, my entire pregnancies, and I was speaking words of affirmation. I was attracting those positive birth vibes to me to make sure that I got the birth that I wanted. However, if something had have happened, I would have 100%, 150%, I would have gone to the hospital if I had have needed to. If I trusted my midwives that much that I knew that they would know if there was a situation that that was no longer in their hands and it would need to be transferred to the hospital. And if they turned around to me and said, we need to go to the hospital, I was prepared to do that. But I also just didn't focus on that. I focused on the birth that I wanted, and I manifested on that belief. And that can be really, really powerful, and it really was. And I'm not saying that's why I got the birth that I wanted and other people get transferred to the hospital. No, I have come across women in my life who birthed all their babies at home except one, and that one was a transfer to the hospital, and there was nothing she could do about it. And I get that. There are certain circumstances where, yeah, you do need some medical intervention, but I was not going to let that overpower my mind. I wasn't going to let that take control of me and take a hold of me. I felt empowered, and I believed that I could birth my baby the way that I wanted to, in the environment that I wanted to, with the care of my trusted midwives that I so trusted with my life and my baby's life. And I just believed in myself. I believed in myself, and I believed in my body's ability to do what it was designed to do, which is to birth a baby. So I decided to have a home birth, and I was very excited about it. I posted on my personal Facebook about it. And then it happened. All the mums, you know what I'm talking about. So for some reason, you say you're pregnant or you ask about birth and you want to hear the empowering stories because you want to know that you can do it, right? But for some reason, mothers feel the need to tell you all the horrific birthing stories. For some screwed up reason, women are desperate to tell these horror stories to a pregnant woman. And it was my first time being pregnant. Like, that's the last thing that a pregnant person, especially that hasn't gone through birth yet, wants to hear. Last thing. And it's the last thing that she should be hearing. Everybody tries to instill fear, and I don't understand it. But to the many, many friends that I have who have had hospital births and all the, messages that people have sent me telling me about the fear-driving tactics that doctors would use on them, including like at 30 weeks, a friend of mine was told that her baby's head was too big for her pelvis and that they needed to schedule a C-section. Now, this person is bigger than me in terms of her bone structure, and this doctor just drove the fear into her, and she was so fearful that her baby wouldn't fit through her pelvis that she scheduled a C-section, and then the baby ended up being like just 8 pounds. But she was scared into that C-section without even having a chance to try. So women aren't being empowered, and instead they fear childbirth like it's a death sentence. For women that have a low risk pregnancy, they are very, very likely to have a smooth sailing, perfectly healthy childbirth, so long as they're allowed to move around while laboring, not being strapped to a bed, which is actually one of the most unnatural, uncomfortable, and painful positions that you can be in to labor and give birth in. A low-risk pregnancy shouldn't need to have any interventions. So that also includes no Pitocin, no epidurals, those kinds of things. But guess what? When you allow yourself to have a drug-free and all-natural birth, you are opening yourself up to so much greatness. So much greatness. You literally get a strong dose of that incredibly heady cocktail of hormones, endorphins, and like this sense of superhuman strength. It's like amazing how our bodies work. If you have an epidural, you still get some of that, but the drugs can really inhibit that a lot as well. In both my experiences, I was on this like incredible birth high for months after giving birth. And at 3 days postpartum, which is usually when they say that the baby blues come on, I hit the baby blues in a way that no one had ever described it to me before. No one had ever talked about this happening to them. And I still often say to some people, did you get this? And most people say no, but I love that this is how I felt. So on day 3 after giving birth, both times, I really, after it happened with Caprice, I was excited to see if it would happen again with Haven, and it did, even more so. I got hit with this incredible sense of grief. Like I was grieving, absolutely 100% grieving the laboring and birthing process. Now that might sound so weird to some people because they're like, I was so happy to be done. Let me tell you, like my labor with Caprice was 65 hours all up. And by the time she came out, I was like really happy that it was over. And even though my labor was quite short with Haven and it was a very even more beautiful experience, I still was excited that it was over and I was meeting my baby. But then on day 3, like I just couldn't stop crying because I wanted to go back and do it all over again. I am literally addicted to birth. I wanted to feel the pains again. I wanted to work hard for my baby again. And just the whole process, it's such a beautiful and powerful experience. I've never experienced anything like this before in my entire life. I had this like sudden rush over the fact that my birth was over. It was really incredible. And like I would ask people and they just were confused and didn't really understand like why I would ever feel that way. And then I went on to birthing forums and other women were expressing feeling the exact same way. They were addicted to giving birth too. Seriously though, giving birth really can be addictive if you just surrender yourself to the process and you go through the motions. Did it hurt? Yeah, like hell. Did I have to work for my babies? Yes. Like I said, Caprice was a 65-hour labor and I pushed for 55 minutes. I was also in transition for 4 of those hours. 4 hours that I was getting contraction after contraction on top of each other. Then I'd get a 60-second break and then I'd get like 5 or 6 contractions on top of each other over and over and over. And this happened for 4 hours. So I worked very, very hard for her. And when it was over, I was just so glad that I did. And that was part of the grief that I felt. Like I just had this human being that I had just given birth to, and I was like looking at her and just bawling my eyes out because I was like, I don't have to work hard for her anymore. She deserves so much more than this. She deserves me to work hard. Well, you do. You have to work hard for the rest of your life to raise them to be good people, but I didn't know that yet, you know, like I was just in this moment and on this high. And so I was like, I just want to work hard for her again. I just want to go back and do it all again and just work hard for her again. It was honestly the weirdest thing ever. And people are probably like watching this thinking I'm crazy, but I'm telling you guys, this is what can happen if you just surrender, if you just allow it to happen, if you just have a beautiful birth that you desire and you empower yourself before you give birth. Practice the type of birth that you want before you give birth and go in there with someone who's going to hold you accountable and who's going to stand by your side, whether that be your husband or a doula or a friend who acts like a doula. Have somebody there who helps you through, who encourages you when you might be feeling like you can't do this any longer or you want to give up or you want to take the drugs or whatever. So like you've probably gathered, it probably sounds crazy, but birth is pure magic. That's how I feel when I give birth. It is magical. I promise you, you will not walk away from a natural birth the same person that you went in. I promise you, you will feel so empowered. You'll feel like a better and way more badass version of yourself. Birth is a gift. It's a gift from God. He has trusted women to give birth. Think of it that way. Birth is not a medical condition. It is a gift that God has entrusted in us as women to do. Because could you imagine if a man had to give birth? We are strong, we are powerful, we are badasses, like we just are. Men could not handle birth, I'm telling you. Women give birth for a reason. Now, I just want to mention here that this video, I do not want to be misconstrued as me saying that somebody who had an epidural or somebody who had a C-section is not as badass. You still birthed a baby. Go you. You're incredible no matter how you give birth, no matter how many drugs you had during your birth, no matter if you scheduled your C-section or it was an emergency. You are incredible. Feel empowered because you still had a baby come out of your body and you still grew that human being inside of you for however long you grew them for. It's not me saying that you are less special or less powerful or less badass or less empowered. Absolutely not. But I wanted to just focus on changing the perspective of birth. Sure, it's painful and it's so painful at times you may want to scream. Everybody is different. I did not scream at all during my births, but I have friends who did a natural birth, screamed, and still came out the other end and feels flipping fantastic and so empowered because hello, you just birthed a baby. Hello, you're amazing. But an epidural's risks really far outweigh the benefits. C-sections can absolutely be very, very, very necessary. I have friends who pushed for hours and hours and hours, and because of the baby's positioning, it just wouldn't come out. There was just no way. And so one of my friends, she had her son lodged in her pelvis and then she had to go in for an emergency C-section, and after 4 hours of pushing, and then the doctor actually had to get up on the bed and push the baby back up her pelvis and out through the tummy. And so for her, like, a C-section was absolutely necessary, obviously. Another of my friends had placenta previa, and so she needed to have a C-section. C-sections, have their place, absolutely. But the point I want to make is that natural vaginal births are our right. And if you ignore all the idiots who think you want or need to hear their birthing horror stories, and you take control of your own birth, you too can become addicted to birth. So that is really what I wanted to say on this subject. I just really wanted to empower some women out there. Take control of your own personal autonomy. Take control of your birth. And if you choose to have a hospital birth, make sure that you set the rules, because it is your birth and your birth only. It is not the doctor's births. It's not the midwives or the nurses' births. So some great birth resources that I would highly recommend you reading are Ina May's Guide to Natural Childbirth, Childbirth Without Fear, and Natural Childbirth the Bradley Way. I often get asked if I did any birthing classes, and we did. We did the Bradley method birthing classes, and I specifically picked the Bradley method over hypnobirthing, purely because the Bradley method really focused on empowering husbands to be your birth coach. And my husband had no clue about anything to do with childbirth, babies, nothing. So I really wanted him to go into it feeling empowered as well as me. And I'm the type of personality that I can do my own research and find empowerment myself. But I knew he wouldn't be the one to go looking for resources. He wouldn't have read any books or anything like that. So I really needed to do something that helped to empower him as well. And so we did that together, and that was great because it just helped him understand childbirth and all the different steps in labor. And so that was the perfect class for us. It just worked really well for us. However, during my birth with Haven, I really used a lot more of the hypnobirthing kind of techniques. I didn't actually do any hypnobirthing classes, but I watched a lot of videos and read up on it, and I didn't feel like I needed to go and spend money on another class. I'd already given birth before, and I knew that I was a strong person already, and so I could just focus and empower myself and focus on the type of birth that I wanted. So I would strongly recommend hypnobirthing classes as well if you feel drawn to that. So I'm going to leave the links to all of those books that I mentioned in the description below, and I'm also going to put some links to a couple of studies that just show that the outcome of home births is actually very, very safe so long as you're a low risk pregnancy. So know that people's perspective on birth is still in that medical condition mindset, and so they think that home births are completely unsafe, where in fact a lot of data can show that a home birth for a low risk pregnancy is actually much safer because there's no risk in unnecessary medical intervention. All right, guys, I absolutely loved talking about this with you. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below. If there's any other kind of video topic to do with birthing or home birthing specifically that you want me to talk about, please write those in the comments below as well, and I would love to do that for you because it's just something that I really love talking about and I'm very passionate about. And if you obviously have any questions, please do reach out as well. And so that is it for me today, and as usual, I will see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.
You're cold. You gonna get late?